Okay. A very good afternoon to all of you. I welcome you again to the new series of AIRIA webinar. And today, a topic of a prime importance which we are going to discuss is on the advances and future perspective of silica in rubber. I hope everybody of us are aware that in the recent year, silica has been used as an alternative filler to carbon black, especially in tires. I would also say that this adoption of silica in tire has reduced carbon emission and has proved to increase vehicles' fuel efficiency as well. And therefore, it's one of the key reasons why demand for silica is gaining popularity as an alternative to carbon black. Apart from that, I would also say that it is very much crucial to understand at this point of time that the role of silica in rubber compounding is of a key importance at this date, and we will also come to learn about the best practices being adopted globally. And with us today is Professor Dr. Shantanu Chattopadhyay, who is the head of rubber technology, who is a professor also at IIT Kharagpur and head of the Rubber Technology Center. Now, there are a lot of credentials which owes to the kitty of Dr. Chattopadhyay. He holds a degree of MSME from IIT Kharagpur, MTech from IIT Bombay, and a PhD from IIT Kharagpur again. Postdoctoral research, he has worked with various universities, and out of them is this. One of them is Western Ontario, which is from Canada, and Georgia Institute of Technology, USA. And currently, he is the faculty at IIT Kharagpur, and he has been serving there since 2004 till date. His current research interests are FEA of rubber/textile ministry, rubber-based nanocomposites, rubber compounding and modification, viscocelestial behavior of rubber and polymer blends, polymer processing, rheology, synthesis, and characterization of block copolymers by controlled polymerization, smart rubber composites, biomaterials, and polymers for healthcare and energy harvesting. That's a lot, sir. He also has one international and one national patent on his name and has authored more than 130 journals and 5 book chapters. Needless to say that he has been a key speaker at various forums, national as well as international. But just to summarize it, he has delivered talks on such crucial topics on more than 100 conferences and symposium. Without taking much of a time, sir, I would now request Dr. Shantanu Chattopadhyay to deliver his address.
Thank you so much, Mr. Singh, for the kind introduction. Welcome to this talk. Next 1 hour or so, I'll take you through the progresses that has been done and that has been made in silica, basically. So before going details into that, I'll give you a quick highlight. I think so. You all have seen that highlights. I'll try to tell you the classification and properties of silica as a filler, then fundamentals, chemistry of silica by which your tire will be rolling, your rubber product will be rolling actually, the surface functionalization and coupling agent, that's the crucial role there, and the role of silica in rubber compounding, how different it is like with the traditional carbon black compounds. And then how can you make silica better and better substitute? Like, can I make it 100% substitution of carbon black at the end? And then what are the challenges you'll face? And then solutions step by step. And then global scenario across. And I'll take you to, can I really adopt it in a wide gamut of rubber products? So that's what is going to be the theme of today's talk. So again, before I go into details, it's my duty to introduce you to my institution. So I belong to IIT Kharagpur as it was introduced. And in fact, IIT Kharagpur is the first IIT out of Fab 5 which have been established after immediately the independence of India. So IIT Kharagpur was the first, followed by IIT Bombay, Delhi, Kanpur, and then Madras. So that was how it was constituted. And then over the period of time, we have become 23 in our IIT fraternity now. It's almost like across all states of India now. So if you have a look quickly in IIT Kharagpur has 45 now department centers and schools and 30 plus specialized R&D center. And for your information, our campus itself is located around 2,200 acre land. So it's so huge. It itself like a small municipality here. If you look at broad discipline, we cover almost all engineering discipline, you can name it, starting from computer science to naval architecture to mining, anything you can name. And then we are into the basic sciences, biosciences, social sciences, management, and also in the law, entertainment, entrepreneurship everywhere. And in terms of academic degree, it can be starting from BTech, BArch, MSc, PhD, DSc, it's all gamut up. In campus, we have 13,000 plus students there. We have about 750 now. The faculty strength and research publications is over 2,500 journal papers and several patents, book chapter, intellectual property rights. We are not only confined to Kharagpur here, but also we are having outreaches. I mean, our establishments in Calcutta, in Bhubaneswar, in Hyderabad, and that's how we try to reach out to serving our country. Our goal is not to just catch up. Our goal is to lead from the front. I mean, from the slogan of the Make in India, basically. Coming to my center, it was as old as the IIT is. In fact, you'll be surprised to know the first PhD from the entire IIT system was a person who worked in rubber technology, but that time IIT was with applied chemistry department here. So after that, we separated in 1981 and we acquired all the sophisticated instruments. We become self-dependent. And then in 2014, we have been awarded as the best rubber technology research and education institute in Asia. So we have many programs. Not only we teach our masters and PhD, but also we do give a lot of short-term courses. In the industry, we offer some of the courses teaching the manpower. So that is our part of the curriculum. We host international conferences and so on and so forth. We have about 6 faculties today. They are working in various gamuts of polymer science and rubber technology, basically. So I am currently leading the center. So these are the names of the faculties. And other than faculties, we have 4 non-teaching staffs, about 46 MTech students and 50 PhD students. And most importantly, see our impact in the country. Although we are small, but we have, last 5 years, we have published more than 4,000 plus publications in international journals, patents, book chapters, international conferences, and many more. So now coming to the location of the IIT Kharagpur, it's a little far from Kolkata. It's about 2-hour journey, 2.5 hours by car from the Calcutta airport. But we are really well connected with the railways. Eastern headquarters some point of time was Kharagpur. And if you look at the map, we are equidistant from Baleshwar, Jamshedpur, Kolkata, Kalyani, Haldia. So if you just can recall that this part of the country have pioneered the rubber and polymer technology, basically. And it was a lot of industries around. So in fact, I'll show you what are the industry we are surrounded, the IIT Kharagpur we are catering. Those are actually, if you look at it's Himadri Chemicals, which makes the fillers. You have Phoenix Conveyor Belts, which in Kalyani, Exide Battery, Haldia Petrochemical, Builder Tire in Baleshwar. So we are almost, it's like a circle to cover it with. Okay, and not only that, just about 100 kilometers from here, there are a lot of MSMEs. I mean, in Baudia, in Jamshedpur, where there are a lot of scopes that they can adopt the new technologies. But unfortunately, still those people, although they're importing their stocks to in the countries and abroad, but their facilities, their kind of a technology is a little outdated. So in the Make in India slogan, we are in a tribe. We have already done survey in such some places, and we are going to spread that knowledge base. We are trying to establish the center of excellence from here. But today's of course, the internet world, I'm not talking about my place, but it's not difficult to reach you out in Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai, Bangalore, anywhere else in the country. So this is a broad disciplines where we worked with. It's already it has been introduced. But if you look at kind of tie-up we have, we cover almost all the government agencies. We are tied up with the big multinationals like DSM Elastomer, like in Michelin tires, Bridgestone tires, Goodyear tires, you name. And then in Indian scenario, most of the rubber industries, most of the rubber forum, including AIRI, say for example, I'm a regular speaker there, and I am in some of the committees of the programs also. And in globally also, in most of the prominent rubber and polymer institute, we are in a great touch with. and as well as we have some exchange students. The professors are regularly coming. We have deliberation, everything. So this is how our global presence is. We are all over in America, in Europe, in Australia, in New Zealand, in Korea, in Japan. So many of the collaborations are either there or coming up. So coming to my research group, I mean, where I worked, if you look at it, my research is into the 5 verticals. The very first vertical is the basic rubber polymer blends thermoplastic elastomer. In that, we work with structure property, viscoelastic property and processing, simulation for rubber products for the dye and mold design. Say, for example, alternative source of rubber. Say, for example, is today natural rubber source is not there. Is there some problem? So what will be the natural resources again? That also you work with. And of course, the green rubber technology and recycling. So today's talk actually broadly covers the green technology in the line of the silica, basically. So other than that, we do work with the high performance rubber that includes the automotive, aerospace, and mostly the very critical applications like high performance seals, O-rings, hoses, those. In the smart applications, today is a smart world everywhere. You see, I do work on smart textiles, self-filling, and stimuli responsive polymers as well. In the energy facet, today there is a huge crisis of energy, so rubbers are not far off. If you look at rubber rubber polymeric material as a solar cell material, thermoelectric material, triboelectric material, that is very important. If you really do friction, can you harvest the energy out of that? So another facet, today's in COVID situation, you can really realize how important is the drug and antiviral delivery. So in that facets also, we do work on the stimuli responsive and controlled drug and protein and vaccine delivery, worked on scaffolds, works on bone tissue engineering. Of course, I mean, this is not the today's focus. I'm going to focus today's on in a different area, which is silica, but that of course come under the verticals of the basic rubber and polymer technology. So without taking much of time now, I'll straight away take you to the my content. So I'll give you a quick introduction, then I'll take you to the history, how silica was developed, then classification and properties, surface chemistry, that is very, very important. Rather than the bulk, the surface is very important for the fillers. The role of silica in rubber compounding, carbon black and silica will try to compare and see where silica is having edges and where is the disadvantages. The basic challenges that you must face once you try to adopt silica as a replacement of carbon black. What are the solution? What is the worldwide demand? And finally, the references where you can consult upon. So if you try to see, the silica is nothing but is a silicon dioxide chemically, SiO2. Okay, so it's actually commonly found in quartz. Okay, quartz crystals. So quartz actually is crystalline, but many varieties of quartz can be amorphous as well. But in quartz crystal structure, it's a hexagonal form. It's like just a hexagonal. You can see from the cartoon there. Okay. But amorphous part, there is a local order of hexagons, but little bit randomized. So you don't have a crystalline structure. It's more of like a glassy appearance. Now, taking you to the history, in fact, the silica and silicate as a replacement of carbon black, first mankind has realized in 1950s. And sooner and later in 60s around, the precipitated silica, which is of lower cost, of course, than pyrogenic silica. I'll take you there, what is what and how they're different. They have been first adopted in shoe sole. Why it was adopted? To make it a colored compound, colored and transparent compound. You know, carbon black, if I put in rubber, I cannot afford to have a colorful world. I can only have it with a silica or some other non-black fillers. So silica has the edge over there. It not only improves the aberration, but also it has the color properties is very, very good. Now slowly from the shoe sole, it has been taken out to the heavy services. Like it has silica, gives you good cutting and chipping resistance and better adhesion to textile. So that brings you slowly your silica to the tires. Of course, first you have to start with a very light tires, and then it invaded into the technology invaded into the passenger car trade by 1990. So then after 1990, people realized when they tried to compare silica very closely, silica has many advantages in terms of tire magic triangle. it gives you a better rolling resistance. That means you can save the fuels. It gives you a better weight grip resistance. Of course, abrasion is little inferior compared to carbon black. That of course is manageable. That I'll talk about later. So now, if you cross the 2010 and on, now today's 2020-25. So now there is a huge demand for green tire. Like you must have to replace the carbon black as a filler. You have to go by the silica. You have no other alternative as a reinforcing filler like silica. So that's the demand for our consumption of silica multiplied. It is approximately 0.5 million tons per year now. So now why silica? Because today, if you look at, many places the traditional energy sources are depleting. Carbon has a very negative effect on the environment. So it has a greenhouse effect, many sort of atmospheric effects. So you can see from the cartoon at your left, you can see if we can have a wind power, if we can harvest like the other form of energy, and then we can keep our society, our civilization moving. And if I can reduce carbon black, say for example, carbon footprint in the world, so you can see the sun ray light comes, it irradiates our surface of the earth, but ultimately when it comes back, because of these greenhouse gases, it actually scatters randomly. Your earth becomes warm, your sea level it rises, and that creates a lot of nuisance you might have faced in these days. How the temperature has raised up, what are the natural calamities are coming every day. So that is the reason, if you look at the source of carbon black, it's the petroleum feedstock. And if you look at this carbon, once again, is giving you kind of a carbon emission. So this cartoon shows you what is the natural influx. The violet color shows you that artificially we are making in the form of a fossil fuel combustion, industrial processes, so land uses indiscriminately, so on and so forth. So in order to make our earth green, in order to don't have the this sort of interference from the carbon, so silica is probably one of the major solutions. Because you can imagine how much carbon black is consumed in the form of rubber. Forget to keep aside the other uses itself. So now taking you to the little bit of chemistry and physics of silica first. So if you look at silica and the types, as I said, it is crystals. It appears in the form of a quartz, say, for example. It can be molecular glasses. Molecular glasses means it's a little bit of hexagonal, but it's a little distorted. So it doesn't have a long range order, but it only has a short range order. The very, very first example is vitreous silica, your window glasses. Other form of silica is the colloidal silica, like amorphous opal AG, for example. That has a regular order, but in the colloidal form. And there are, of course, the colloidal glass. If you can imagine, colloidal glass is same as the colloidal crystals, but it doesn't have a long range order otherwise. Now, taking to our business now, if you look at silica from our point of view, you have a precipitated silica, you have a pyrogenic silica. Just now, I'll try to elaborate what is what. Okay. So these two are mainly used as a reinforcing filler in rubber compounding. Other two forms of silica is silica aerogel and silica hydrogels. They have different uses. I'll elaborate a little later. So now coming to the silicon dioxide, as I said, you can get it from the natural sources. You can make it from the synthetic sources. But nonetheless, if I just try to see them, categorize them, I can get it as a fume silica or pyrogenic silica, which is made by gas phase flame hydrolysis reaction. The second one is a precipitated silica, where our today's talk will be mostly centering around. And then precipitated silica in another variety by a new Huber process. And then the gel or wet process of silica. Down there, some of the properties are jotted down. If you see, the particle size of fume silica is probably the smallest one. But of course, the gel also has a smaller size, but bed surface area, everything it's changeable basically. But moisture content is a very, very important factor. If you look at fume silica, it's always 2% or less. Like sometimes they exaggerate 2.5, but it's actually less than 2%. And if you look at precipitate silica, on the contrary, it is about sometimes 4 to 6, sometimes it can go all the way to 9%. And that is very important. The moisture content of it. So I'll take you back here in the subsequent slides. Now taking you to the precipitated silica, because our point of focus is precipitated silica. The chemistry is very simple. You have a sodium silicate, you acidify it. Once you acidify it, it will form a salt, like sodium chloride in this case, and it will give you silicon dioxide. Similarly, if you react with sulfuric acid in presence of oxygen, it's oxidizing media, it will form sodium sulfate and silicon dioxide that way. So this is the chemistry of it to forming the silicon dioxide from the sodium silicate, which you mostly get it from natural mineral sources, basically from the sands. But one important thing, although the reaction seems very, very easy to you, but three important things you have to remember. One is the temperature during the processing. Second is the pH in which you actually precipitate. And then third one is the time of processing. Okay, so this makes a difference. So say for example, if you do it as a very low pH, is a long time, you can get a conventional silica. But if you really do it a high pH short time, so you get like a HD silica, what you call today HD silica. There are a lot of markets here today. And if you do it like in between, you can get a semi HD silica. So that is the chemistry. I'm not taking you that itself take you a one full day lecture. But nonetheless, once you make the primary form of silica particle, you have to wash it. You have to wash it with the current of decantation system, or there is something called filter press, by which salt content should be reduced as far as possible in the silica, final silica. It should be of the tune of less than 1% sometimes. If you really want to have a better quality silica for our users. And then after you have a spray drying system, and to remove the rest part, you still have a 30-40% water in the filter press. So you have to reduce it. So final water content should be 5 to 6%. That is very important. And then finally it is milled and compacted and packed and sold to the market. So that is what the process is basically. So now if you just have a quick glance into the silicon dioxide made by precipitation process or wet process, you call precipitated silica. Although it's little exaggerated, 10% moisture content, it should be ideally less than 6% basically for good quality. Otherwise, you have to really make it dry while compounding with rubber. The particle size is, of course, of the tune of 10 to 100 nanometer, but talking about a particle size is very tricky because silica exists in aggregated form. That is most important. Carbon black also exists in a aggregated form, but that aggregate size compared to carbon black is finer. That I'm coming there. So this is giving you this particle size more less than 45 nanometer primary particle size. So that gives you the optimum reinforcement. Thereby you can improve the tensile strength, tear strength, abrasion resistance, and all the failure properties. Now taking you to pyrogenic silica. Pyrogenic silica is made from, chlorosilane basically, at silicon tetrachloride, and it can be made directly from quartz also. Okay, so temperature is very high, and then once silicon dioxide is formed by the reaction with the water and SiCl4, it has to be immediately quenched, and then you have to subsequently process it. So you can understand, since the process is very high temperature, so since it is high temperature, your moisture content is much less. As I told you, it's less than 2% in this case. So let us have a quick look through in the fume silica, say for example. The fume silica has a very strong thickening effect. It's very, very hard. It's just like a hard clay, soft clay, hard clay, those who knows. It contains 2% or less than 2% combined water. Primary particle size, remember, it's 5 to 15 nanometer. In state of aggregation is quite less, but it aggregates because of this particle size. And it has a huge surface area and its density. So if you compare vice carbon black and all these two types of silica, carbon black is little lower density as compared to silica, but it's really little difference is there. So I'll stop over here. Sometimes you just have a glance through the slides. That gives you a very good comparison between the basic properties of fume silica vice precipitated silica. Starting from specific surface area, that is very important. Higher the surface area, higher will be the reinforcement, basically. And then mean particle size, then different types of density, loss on drying. Loss on drying is related to the moisture content. pH value plays very, very important role, because when you vulcanize rubber, most often your acceleration is done because of the basic conditions. So if you have little basicity, that's how carbon blacks are modified. You get age in the curing business, but otherwise your cure will be retarded. Okay, so this is what a comparative view between the fumed silica vice precipitated silica in this case. Now I'm taking to you, I'll go through very slowly this slide because this is where the heart of chemistry lies. I mean, the silica as a reinforcement, silica to how to use silane coupling agent, what type of a silane coupling agent, how you make the optimum properties. This is the chemistry. You have a look in the cartoon. So if you look at the functionality of silicon dioxide, it's simply SiO. It ends like it's a structure, cage-like structure forms. But if it's in the bulk, but if you look at the surface, where there's no other silicon dioxide molecules to coalescence, you have either isolated silanol group SiOH. You can have like vicinal between two silica. This is protruded silica, oxygen, and it can be a geminal. That means within one silica, two OH groups are protruded, and another one is of course a silicon oxygen bonds. So if you look at a vicinal silica is highly hydrogen bonded. So you cannot be effectively able to use that functionality to tailor make it to reinforce a rubber. So what you can do, this isolated silica that is designated as Q3 and the geminal silica, which is Q2, these two are the most reactive SiOH bonds that you can actually functionalize. Correct? So these two groups plays very critical role. Now I'm coming back to the precipitated silica, vice fumed silica. If you look at fumed silica, as you make it at a very high temperature, it actually has a less SiOH or SiOH content compared to that of precipitated silica. That makes fumed silica difficult to disperse in the rubber matrix, because once you use a coupling agent that I'm coming there, so that will not be that easy in that case to make it coupled so easily. So fumed silica, once again, to give you a quick recap, fumed silica has less moisture. That is an advantage. But fumed silica has less functionality. That is the utmost disadvantage of fumed silica to be, effectively reinforcing rubbers basically. So does it make sense? Once again, quickly to repeat this slide, you have 4 different types of functionality. Out of that, 2 functionality you recall now on, your free SiOH group and your geminal SiOH group. Geminal means SiOH-OH. So these 2 groups plays crucial role subsequently once you try to put in silica more and more into the rubber. So once again, you just try to have a look in the cartoon. You have a vicinal, geminal, precipitated. So vicinal, you can see from the cartoon, it's strongly hydrogen bonded. SiO-Si, it's forget about that. You cannot be, because all the 4 valencies are satisfied there. And then your geminal side, you have SiOH-OH free. So these 2 most reactive out of it, the isolated silanol. The next to that is the geminal one. So that is why we are going to play in 2-3 more slides. Subsequently, basically. So again, once again, whatever I explained you, that is written in the schematically SiOH-OH, that is silicic acid condenses, and it forms you SiO-Si linkage, and that actually propagates all the 3 dimensions, forming the surface. What I'm telling here is a xerosol, and xerosol forms ultimately your surface functionality by a process of condensation and dehydration mechanisms. It forms SiOH, which is isolated, SiOH-OH, which is called geminal. These 2 are very critical for our subsequent applications. So now if I compare the surface chemistry of silica vice with carbon, if you look at periodic table, carbon is in the top, in the next row is silicon. Okay, carbon, its form of carbon, like a graphite, is conducting. Silicon, where all your semiconductors are made, is semi-conductive basically. Okay, so now try to imagine your right side of that carbon and silica in the periodic table. What you have? You have nitrogen next to carbon, you have oxygen next to next. And silicon, on the contrary, you have next is phosphorus, next to next is sulfur. So most of the chemistry for silicon will be centering around sulfur and phosphorus. Okay. On the contrary, with the carbon, your playground is carbon, nitrogen, carbon, oxygen. That is the major functionality. So that's what you can see from the cartoon. Okay, so this actually functional groups from silica as well as carbon black interacts with your rubber matrix, and it forms bond. I mean, that you have to make cozy situation where it can form a bond, and that will give you final reinforcement so that your rubber will not undergo kind of abrasion, wear, or catastrophic failure, by the way. So it makes clear. So two things: surface chemistry of silica, surface chemistry of carbon is a little different. Although carbon has also the 4 different sides energy-wise. There is this kind of slate, graphitic, amorphous sides. Out of that, some are reactive, some are less reactive, depending on that carbon black reinforces. Carbon black has all gamut of sizes, starting from your SAF, ISF, HAF, and so on and so forth. And as you go on, keep on there, your size increases, so reinforcement attributes reduces basically. So this is what is a quick comparison between the surface of carbon versus silica. Now my point is that I understand I have given a silica, but how do I know how much reactive or active functional group I have in that particular pillar per gram? Okay. So for example, how much is the SiOH? How much is the SiOH groups present there? That is very, very critical though. So to do that, you have to do characterization. What do you do? One of the major characterization technique is NMR. By the way, this is very expensive characterization technique. One NMR machine costs you several crores basically. And that too for silicon NMR, Si29 NMR, you have to keep your sample over 7 days for each samples for a cross polarization and magic angle spinning. I'm not going into the complication that itself takes you several hours to make you understand fully. But nonetheless, the cartoon shows you 2 spectrum. One on your left-hand side is the precipitated silica. On the right-hand side is a fumed silica. As you can understand, precipitated silica has one peak, and that peak is centering around 90 ppm and 100 ppm, which is majorly due to the geminal and isolated sealants, essentially. So this peak itself is telling you how different is chemically the surface of it. Silica, that too, both are silica. One is precipitated silica, another is pyrogenic silica or fume silica. Okay, and of course, some of the ppms chemical shifts mentioned here are due to the coupling agent, and that you can monitor the coupling reaction, how effective it is. I'll take you very quickly there about the sealant coupling agent. That is part and parcel of this chemistry of silica. So ultimately, if you integrate it, you will get how much functionality you have, how much percentage functionality you have. And depending on that, you choose your coupling agent or modifier on the silica surface so that you can be able to optimally bond silica with the rubber surfaces. The next important characterization technique that will give you the clue if at all my package, my kind of a formulation is working or will be working, either it's in the development stage or in the quality control stage, you will be able to assure. This machine also costs you like 5 to 7 crores. It's very, 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 very expensive technique, but we recently procured in rubber technology in IIT Kharagpur. So this shows you a kind of a modification of silica with twin 20, which is a surfactant. So how effectively twin is covering the surface of silica, and thereby if you put it in the rubber, there is no issue, it will disperse very easily. So what it is showing, the binding energy, that is the characteristics of a particular element. So for example, carbon 530 is oxygen, and then you have a silica which is centering around around 100 electron volt, and thereby you can characterize how your functional groups are reacting with the coupling agent, and your coupling agent is reacting with the rubber. So coupler is nothing but, for your example, you have 2 hands. One hand you are holding one friend, in the other hand you are holding other friend, and make them united. Correct? So coupling agent is such an agent. Filler rubber are different people. So they are in between. So they have 2 hands. They can hold rubber in one hand, other hand the filler, so that it will make a very uniform, homogeneous composition. So this is another example, not the sealant, but a different type of a coupling approach that I'll elaborate later. So from integrating the peak, I'll be able to really say 104 is silicon 2p, 155 silicon 2s, carbon, oxygen. So all this functionality I'll be able to calculate down and say, oh, this much is the functionalization of my silica is happening. Similarly, another very quick technique that, of course, you can afford probably today's in the medium industries, and I am sure many of you are having, is the FTIR. Although it doesn't really give you, you'll not be able to help with this machine alone develop anything. I mean, for the R&D way. So if you really want to invent, you have to really have a breakthrough. You need those two equipment on top of that FTIR, which clearly says if you have a reaction, if you have a reinforcement, what are the peaks responsible? How silicon oxygen SiOH is reacting to form SiO something hydrocarbon links, how it is getting modified with Si69 on NXT coupling agent. So that is it's showing from this cartoon. I'll not take much of time, but if you have any questions later on regarding that, you're free to ask me in the question answer session. But very important thing, silica versus carbon black. I have to always compare as I go on, because I have to replace all my carbon black with silica in the long run. So silica aggregates are finer compared to the carbon black. So that is how it gives you more reinforcement in many cases. But problem is that if you don't use a coupling agent, this silica, you disperse it, mix it. Once again, it has as a characteristics over time, it will come over, reunite. It's called flocculation. So that's what its cartoon is showing. So in case of silica, filler interaction is more than filler polymer interaction. So somehow to make my composite very good, I have to make this polymer filler interaction win this situation. So filler interaction should be subdued in that cases. So this cartoon shows you the filler aggregate size for silica is a little higher compared to carbon black. Of course, over as I go on, you'll understand how I can make it really smaller aggregate size. So role of silica in rubber compound. Now there is a very basic thing in any chemistry you do, like dissolves like. So it happens in the society also. We only mingle or make friends with our people whom we like. So silica, if you see, it has a higher energy. I mean, you take it surface energy that way compared to carbon black. So naturally, if you have a polar elastomers like NBR, chloroprene rubber, silica goes well. But if you take it to natural rubber, SBR, silica has a natural inhibition to go into that because it's more polar and natural rubber SBR is non-polar. So that's what you have to somehow make it better. Otherwise, stiffness modulus improvement will not be that good. But nonetheless, silica as such, it has a inherent characteristics. It has a basic nature, as I told you. It gives you a faster cure rates. It gives you a better flowability, more flexibility during the extrusion, more flexibility because aggregate size is smaller, provided you use an optimum coupling agent while optimizing the finished product characteristics. Okay, so it gives you many edges, but ultimately its processing is processing and mixing is a little tricky as compared to carbon black. So what is a green tire concept? See, green tire is not looking green in color. Green color doesn't really mean that you change all with the eco-friendly additives like your plasticizer, oil, everything. But the major component, if you look at it in a formulation, after rubber is your filler, and many cases filler is dominating. So in that case, see if you can incorporate silica with the silane. Now silane, I'll say there is non-silane technology that I'll highlight upon. So if you do it, 20 to 25% reduction in rolling resistance, that gives you roughly about 7 to 10% saving of fuel. So this has to be maintaining the safety driving comfort in case of rubber. So there is a magic triangle which shows you the rolling resistance. You have a wet grip. I mean, especially it is important for winter tires applications. And then also the abrasion resistance, because you have a good rolling resistance. You have a wet grip, fine, safety. But if you really cannot match the cost in today's world, it's very difficult to sustain. Now, if you look at it from the magic triangle point of view, carbon black filled by silica filled compound. You see everywhere silica wins the race, everywhere. Only except where resistance is little lower, and you have the electrical conductivity. That is very, very important, electrical and thermal conductivity. Why it is so? As I said, silica is non-conductor, both electrically and thermally. So silica doesn't have avenues to dissipate the heat. If it cannot really dissipate the heat, what will be the consequence? There will be a failure because heat will accumulate it and it will fail from there. So that is why another drawback that you may be facing there. So it can also be done. That is another part I'm not going to talk about today. And also, carbon black has another attribute. It's a good UV absorber. So silica is not. So once you make it fully substituted compound, I mean, you have no carbon black whatsoever. By whatever technology you do that, but you have to really make it up for the wear resistance, electrical conductivity, thermal conductivity, as well your UV resistance. So the challenges, as I said, the very utmost and first challenge is to disperse. So silica has a tendency to aggregate and re-aggregate, basically. That's what it's called, flocculation. Okay, so that you have to circumvent by changing the suitable mixing technique. For your information, with SBR, a lot of R&D has been done. SBR, they have done functionalized, SBR with some functional group at the end. Okay, you have grafted SBR with different types of agent that includes some sort of accelerator molecules, basically. But point is that even if you do it, you cannot really substitute 100% carbon black. But natural rubber, it is even worse. If you go by traditional melt blending techniques, I'm telling you, it's very, very difficult to go more than 10 to 15% substitution of carbon black with silica, keeping intact the other processing and other properties together. So that is a big time challenge. The cartoon over here shows you the polarity or solubility parameter of the filler of the rubber vice versa filler. You can see silica stays far apart from this non-polar materials. So somehow or some way, you have to make them compatibilized, basically, and coupled. So what are the solutions? Solution is using coupling agent. As I said, you should have a molecule with the two hands. One hand, it should hold the silica particles. Another hand should fix it to the rubber chains so that you don't have an issue that filler particle comes out, and so there will be wear and tear so easily. So that's what is the coupling. The second part, why not we can have a pseudo character. That means within my silica, if I have carbon like some surfaces, so that my wear resistance and electrical conductivity will be preserved. And that is what called CSDPF, carbon silica dual phase filler. So that has come by Cabot in a big way sometimes, but it failed to have that impact at silica alone, HD silica alone is making today, basically. So if you look at the structure, I was talking about coupling agent. It's nothing but you have some hydrocarbons like CH2 in other part, you have a reactive functionality, and then silicon with some hydrolyzable entity. So this part, our group, actually reacts or interacts with the rubber chain, and this particular X3 component, X3 factor, that reacts with the silica and it rejoins with the silica surfaces. So you can understand it has two functionalities. So now what about X? X can be alkoxy, it can be acyloxy, it can be halogens, it can be amine. So other part, it mostly, as I said, it's mostly thiol, SH, it is mostly thiocyanate, and it is mostly some other functionality. Okay, so to right now you try to understand it can be either disulfide, thiol, or thiocyanates basically. So this is the R group which can do it. There are wide range of chemistry. As I told you, if you look at it in periodic table, your next to silicon is phosphorus and sulfur. So there are many strategies nowadays. The development is happening. It's the thioesters, thiophosphoric acid derivatives, and that works even better than the traditional silane. So that is altogether a different perspective. So for the time being, you try to understand in the cartoon. You have a entity which is silane coupling agent that has a formula just like this. So how it works? The mechanisms. The SiOCH3 group actually condenses with the silicon weight surfaces. Silicon weight, once again, let me point out, it's either free SiOH or it is geminal SiO, OH. So that is the labile group it has. It actually undergoes hydrolysis and condensation with the OCH3 group. And what it liberates? It liberates alcohol molecules. So there is a point that volatile things will come out. And there is actually a temperature where it reacts. So that is also very critical. It won't react at a room temperature, say, for example. So thereby, you have a two end, another sulfur, S4 or S2, that end, that actually link with the rubber during the process of vulcanization. So you make sure your silica has a permanent gluing effect or bonding effect with the rubber as well, not only the filler alone. So this is the reaction. Those who are from chemistry background, I'm sure you'll love to see that. First is the hydrolysis. So for your information, in order to promote this reaction, there are some activators also available. Those are mostly some small molecules or sometimes some transition metal catalysts that will activate this reaction basically. And then finally it condenses. And finally you make a bond with rubber as well as a filler with the substrate basically. So once again, to show you in a 3D way or in a better way, you have a silica, you have a silane coupling agent. For this case, it's Si69 that you know, that TESPT, one end silica, another end silica, in between there are 4 sulfur. That 4 sulfur is very, very important. And then it reacts, it condenses having some sulfur in, and this sulfur is ready to bind with the rubber molecules, and that's how the silane chemistry works, hand in hand, so sort of a chemistry basically. So coming to the different varieties of silane, there are wide varieties. There are hundreds of silanes, but few of them only of commercial importance for your information. It can be, for your information, this derivatives, these silanes are made out of chlorosilane. That means SiCl, and H. This H actually reacts with whatever organic functionality you want, and this part, your alkoxy, acetoxy, that groups you can couple with the chlorine functionality. So that is how you synthesize the silane coupling agent. And there are many players for your information, like starting from Momentive, starting from your Evonik. Evonik is the first company who started with Si69, and then you have a Solvay, and there are many other players in the coupling silane coupling agent business basically. But nonetheless, chemically they are so. Okay, so there either can be acetoxy or alkoxy sort of a group, and that actually finally. So for your information, if you just not to have a permanent bond with the rubber, if you want to have a physical interaction with rubber, so if you have a NH2 group, if you have a CH11CH2 group, which one will you prefer? We'll prefer obviously CH11CH2 group. But had it been a non-polar rubber, then NH2 group would have given you better compatibility. So that chemistry is as simple as that. So there are amino allyl silane. As I said, it ends with NH2. It can be alkyl silanes. It can be gets terminated with CCl simply. So there are a whole gamut of chemistry there. So different categories. Other than that, I depicted polysulfidic sulfide silanes. Those are very, very important. Aryl silanes, aryl alkyl silanes, glycidyl alkyl silanes, fluoroalkyl silanes, fluoroallyl silanes, and other silanes as well. Like I said, it contains phosphorus, sulfur, and other whole gamut of functionalities. But what is most important for a rubber technologist to remember? The very first silane is TESPT. You don't have to hurt at the chemistry. It looks very, very IUPAC. The name is big. But essentially, it has 4 sulfur, and to the end, you have a silicon which is attached to the SiO linkage, and which ultimately condenses and it eliminates the alcohol as a volatile. In the second case, TSPD, you have rank of sulfur only 2. Why I am coming there? The third one, which is blocked silane, it is it ends with sulfur, and that is condensed or blocked with octadoic acid, basically. So why it is so? The structure. The TSPT has 4 sulfur, so it is more reactive. So it will give you additional cross-linking in the rubber system. But problem is that it has a scorching problem once you go beyond some temperature, say 140 degrees temperature during processing. So it gives you process scorching. So TDSPT was synthesized for that, so that you can have a less risk of scorching, okay? But still it has a risk. Still it is giving you a little higher temperature kind of a scorching problem. So you can understand you are mixing silica in the rubber in an internal mixture, so heat generation will be very rapid. So if you don't control it, it's going to give you some scorchiness in your rubber product, and you don't want scorchiness during mixing, of course. All of you know that fundamentals. The third generation is called NXT. Of course, there is a 4th generation now. Third generation is, as I said, SiSH. That H is blocked. It's a thioester, basically. Okay. So what it gives, because of this bond is stable up to very high temperature, unless you activate that with some sort of activator, this will remain. This will not react. So that you don't have a processing safety during mixing. Okay, only during the vulcanization or some sort of a time when you exactly want it to be unzipped, that time it will work. So it's called blocked NXT. So blocked NXT gives you some sort of a safety, process safety. And not only that, there are some sort of a SIO that can be replaced with other functionalities that can reduce the volatile content. So in the next generation, it's called blocked as well as hindered or less volatile kind of a sealant that I have not listed. That is the next generation of an NXT. So we have all 4 generations out of here, but NXT is very, very expensive. So even some of the multinational tire companies I recently visited in abroad, they also are still with SI69, for your information. So chemistry, in a cartoon, I can show you the coupling reagent. That's a silica surface. It condenses. It actually eliminates alcohol. And on the other part, it reacts with the rubber, giving you the optimum hand-on-hand, bonding, basically. But remember, during processing, it should not form hold his hand with the rubber. Then it gives you a kind of a scorching. So this cartoon is very important, although it looks very, very, very jumbled up. But the left-hand side without coupling agent, right-hand side with coupling agent. Apparently, it looks like same as you have not applied any strain. Once you apply a strain, you can see that some of the things are still holding because you are gluing rubber with the coupling agent with the silica. So you have some sort of a bond. So dynamically, it's much better than that of the left-hand side without sealant, so for example. So once you use sealant, what are the advantage? I don't have to depict it. It gives you lower heat buildup, hysteresis, because your fillers are very much well dispersed in the system, having more interaction with the rubber surface. You have increase in the modulus and tensile strength, improved reinforcement effect, reversion character of silica, or it's grossly reduced. Again, I forgot one thing. Once you use silica, you have to make sure that silica should not have excess absorbed water. So whatever 6% or 2% I talked about, that you cannot eliminate. But on top of that, if you have anything else, so that is going to be a problem. Number 1. Number 2, silica surface without coupling agent may absorb a lot of your accelerator, a lot of other functionalities. So giving rise to less optimum properties. So anyway, so these are some of the bottlenecks you have to make sure you keep it in mind while using sealant as a silica technology adopting in your business line. So this is the advantage you have, like rolling resistance, trade wear, wet grip. Trade wear still is a problem. Carbon black is better, but it's still there are scopes for improvement, and you need to do a lot of R&D. Although some of the research we have done in rubber technology, but it's still you have to work on that to make the other part of the triangle a little favorable for silica. Again, as I have to name Evonik because they're the first who came up with that. So they now they have come up with some of the invention with eliminating VOC, like, SIOET, SIOME. So another thing, before I forget, if you have SIOME, OET, again higher homologues, OME actually reacts at a lower temperature. It condenses at lower temperature, ET at a higher temperature. And as you increase the carbon chain there, carbon number there, it actually demands higher and higher temperature, for your information. So this is the chemistry. So they developed the Evonik, a solid sealant dosing technique. So that is another facet, and in a different forum, I'll try to share with you. Not today because we already have a time constraint. By the way, how much time I have, Mr. Singh or Mr. Hashan? Do I have 10-15 more minutes with me? Am I audible, Mr. Hashan?
Yes, you are audible, sir. We still have another 15-20 minutes.
Perfect. Then I can go
another half an hour.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I'll continue then.
Yeah.
So coming to the HD silica, it was initially developed by Evonik. The process I told you, mostly relies on the processing condition like pH, time of handling, and temperature conditions, basically. So that has actually more SiOH group compared to that of ordinary. That two advantage for HD silica. One is it has more SiOH groups. Number 2, its aggregate size, if you see the bimodal distribution, in that its aggregate size is smaller than the conventional silica. So that way, it can reduce the mixing cycle, and with the less energy, you'll be able to mix, basically. So this is what is a category first taken away, and most of the Indian companies, even I know in Indian company, they are selling, they are doing good also with the Indian variety. Even in Mobile Silica I visited, I have in a collaboration with them. So there also I've seen their silica is quite good quality, especially the HD ones. So if I see, so far I have been showing you the triangle, but now I will show you the hexagon, where HD silica has more edges, like compound processing, rolling resistance. The black one inside is the conventional one. The purple one is the HD silica. Okay. So if you look at, except probably trade wear, everywhere you have the advantage over the conventional silica. So that also, that HD silica, that limitation also can be taken care of. That's a different story. And that has a lot of proprietary part basically to work with. So why you have to go, what is the next step after HD silica, say for example. Now again, taking you quickly to the 4th generation. So far I was talking about 3 generations, Si69, that is TESPT, then disulfide, then which is Si266, then Si263, which I showed you by picture NXT, and which is the next generation, the current generation is XP, Si466. So see, what are the advantages? Si69, better coupling agent, but scorching problem. So Si266 is a better processing characteristics. Si263, reduced rolling resistance even further. VOC, that means your product will not be porous anymore. So volatile content you reduced it. How you reduced it? You didn't use simply SiOET or OOMe. Rather than you use a bifunctional or trifunctional alcohols, so that once it decouples, you don't have any volatile coming out. It will be part of your rubber molecule. So that is what your volatile organic compound will reduce, so that there is no chances your product will become like porous basically. The third one is very, very important. It is free of VOC basically, and that means no ethanol emission in the finished tire. So you will not be able to smell ethanol anywhere. Otherwise, the coupling agent that will smell you the ethanol or any alcohol that is coming out. Okay, and not only that, it is blocked perfectly. So your processing or scorching problem is absolutely not there. So as a entrepreneur, as an industrialist, you'll tell me, okay, sir, I'll go for that XP one. I'll go for the NXT one. But point is that it's very, very costly. Even if you use, for your information, 10% with respect to the silica filler, but still then it's going to add cost to your products exorbitantly. So that is the bottleneck. So this is the silica chemistry. And not only that, thio and phosphorus chemistry I can take you, and what is the recent progresses today, but it will take you many more hours. I mean, merely 1 hour lecture will not suffice in that case. Now coming quickly to CSDP, that what carbon had made an impact basically. That is nothing but your silica, it's called co-fuming technology. Silica and these particles are made together. I showed you isolated 2 methods, fume silica, pyrogenic silica, precipitated silica. But it is made together, co-fuming technology. I mean, your carbon black as well as silica by the process of fume silica, it's coupled together so that you have a hybrid material. You have a silica material, mostly 5% of it has a carbon-like structure, so that whatever limitation silica has, say for example, wear resistance, electrical conductivity, that you can make it up there. So that is the technology. It has been quite challenging, quite cost effective also. And some point of time, people thought of that it is going to replace all the carbon black that is being used. But some of the limitations soon it was found, but still it is very potential, very challenging. You can see the patent yourself, that US patent of that technology, co-fuming technology. Almost 90 to 99% of the carbon could be eliminated. So it's a high polymer filler and low filler interaction type of a product. Okay, so it's amazing, absolutely amazing there. So you can look at that property once you fill it upon the pine effect, which is actually reflection of filler aggregation. That pretty much reduces if you compare to carbon black or silica, say for example, in case of dual filler technology. And then the cartoon below there, it's shown that the performance of a passenger tire vice versa a heavy duty truck tire. So CSDP, as it is shown, in terms of frictional force, CSDP will be much advantageous for the truck tire rather than the passenger tire. Okay, so I'm not going into the details of that technology, but it itself is a very interesting and fabulous. And this lesson from the CSDP, even though we are not practicing, we are taking it forward. We are taking forward for next days, silica technology that we can effectively use it to replace. Again, I'm emphasizing challenges to replace carbon black 100%, to really get rid of the limitation that silica alone has, like thermal conductivity, electrical conductivity, wear resistance, and that to that high degree of loading, because it will give you a lot of processing problems, and that can be circumvented taking lessons from here. So I'm not going to talk about, because it involves a lot of IPR issues there. I'm not going to elaborate or dig it into there any details. To show you very quickly the statistics, so rubber, agrochemicals, oral care, food industry, others, because that is where it's a use of silica lies. But of course, if you see from 2013 on to 2024, you can see in the rubber, the usage has grown exponentially high. 22, 24 is almost like where we started, like in 2013, total silica users. Okay, and another two uses for your information is agrochemicals and oral and food industries basically. Okay, that also I'm going to highlight upon. So if you look at the pie chart, almost the lion's share of it, almost most of it, is dominated by precipitated silica, followed by fume and colloid silica, then fused silica and silica gel. So that is how the market share or total uses lies basically. So quickly have a look. Cumulative annual growth rate is projected to be 7.11% for silica in rubber. Personal care 6.08, food and agro. These are the three major areas where silica is going to be used more and more. Okay. So 2016 market, you can see what it was. I'm sorry I could not show you 2019 and 20. I'm sure now it is a little stagnant, so that will not give you the real picture of it. But more or less, you have seen the progression curve, and from there you can really project where we are actually in 2021 or 2024. By 2024, the silica market is going to be dominated by rubber. It's going to be not less than 50% anyway, because the reason is that, like we have adopted in tire, it's already well proven. All tire industries are doing a lot of R&Ds, a lot of monies. Even a lot of tire companies are giving us the project for R&D activity, a lot of projects. Okay, so likewise, I'm very, very hopeful that all the rubber sectors, non-tire sectors, sooner or later it's going to adopt. So, for example, let me tell you one thing. Already, you know, energy efficient conveyor belts. The technology is same as the rolling resistance that AGU get it out of, in tire. So similarly, in the hose technology, in the sealings, of course, the metal to rubber bonding technology or metal to textile, silica has no substitute. So all our industries is going to sooner or later adopt a silica and start replacing carbon black in a phase-wise manner, and it's going to dominate for sure. That's what my kind of a view is. So again, to show you the global picture of the precipitated silica, the rubber market, what is how much billion it's going to be, how much million, 1801.6, and then energy efficient tires, it's mostly dominated these days, that consumption is, as I told you, and Asia Pacific region, its growth rate is 4.03, and what is going to be the incremental growth, and it's going to touch like some billion, and that's what it's going to be the market prediction, and it has been taken from the recent resources. Once again, taking you to carbon black is used as a filler in rubber compounds in Vogue for excellent reinforcing properties. But what are the drawbacks? Some of the dynamic properties, especially the rolling resistance, wet split resistance, winter applications, those are inferior. Those can be improved by silica. Why silica? Because silica gives you lower rolling resistance once again. But silica alone will not do. Silica needs some sort of a modification. At present, in Vogue technology, the sealant technology. But one thing I am not elaborating more, because that has a lot of commercial prospect, although people have done it with the salicylic acid derivatives and other derivatives. I showed you the 2-in-20 derivatives, but many others are unexplored. So although we have been biased towards the sealant technology today, because like it used to be like when natural rubber was discovered, after that all the rubber, we need to have a dyne link. if I don't have a double bond, I cannot be able to vulcanize. But soon after, when peroxide vulcanization was discovered, people know that EPM rubber, which has a much better, thermal resistance properties, that can be vulcanized. That doesn't have a double bond anyway, so it can be vulcanized. So sealant doesn't necessarily need to be the only coupling agent that is used for rubber. There are many more avenues for your example. Even already we got some of the very exciting results that is even better than your NXT sealant agents. But again, that time will tell. As I said, not only in rubber tire sector, but also it has implication in many other facets. Like say, for example, the semiconductor, electronic control units, it's highly silica filled components. Okay, so filler you have only silica. You have a phenolic curative, say for example here. Okay, so in this cartoon you can see a green automotives. Why I'm saying green? It's not a green color once again. It's a tire which has many of the components derived from your plant kingdom, animal kingdom, living world. And also this sealant coupling agent, it can be any other fatty acid groups. If you understand the chemistry, you can understand the periodic table, then you will be efficiently figure out or discover, rediscover, make it India kind of a technology that will prosper in futures to come. Other than entire sector, if you look at it quickly, I'm showing you other gamut where colloidal silica can be used to the adhesives, giving you some bonding hardware, gel bonding with the fillers, laminations, fairing. So that way you can have some alternate use of the silica as well. So some of the references are jotted down here. Some of the theses are there. I mean, in some of the places, like in Netherlands, they have done a significant progress of work. I followed some of the, product lines from Evonik, from Momentive, some many other companies, even some of the Indian companies, Lemulator. But these are the resources. I have many theses jotted down with the recent development and futures to come. So once again, I'll talk about my group. Other than the all traditional rubber technology facility, we have some sort of additional facilities that makes us stronger for research and development. Looking at our present strength, we have about 18 students working in the group, and many of them are working on silica technology alone. I mean, they're trying to work on silica. They're trying to come out with alternative to sealant coupling agent. That I showed you the area which we cover. And in that, these are the present students, overseas students as well, sponsor students working from the industry, as well as our own students here, projects, working in a projects, as well as institute scholars, starting from Sanjay, Lakshmi, Ria, Alhoy, Devabroto, Mohit. Mohit is working on simulation. Abhijit is working on this silica part, another aspect in Apollo tires. Mr. Mandulai is a senior DRDO scientist. Trina is over here. She's working in biomaterials. Sanjay is working in polyurethane. Sipra is working on fluorocarbon and silicon. Suchismita MRIC is working on green technology. Soikot is working on silica. Provin is from DORL Pune. Sujit is from here, institutes are working on dye and mold design. Obinova is working in the bio drug delivery system. Onsul is in Australia. He is working in Australia. I am co-guide from Indian counterpart. Devottam is working in nanotechnology, and Sudip is working from DRDO. Once again, it's about to finish. So I should again thank those who have already graduated working with my group. Starting from Salmoli Hui, Ananto Mishra, Sumon Mitro, Utpal Bashuli Piyush, Sudipto, Sanal, Selva Kumar, Obhijit Kumar, Mr. Dr. Shawar Dhanania who graduated in 2017, all ARI people, Kajol, Om Prakash, and Piyush Mondal. I am really indebted. Without them, this whole gamut of research would not have been covered. And with that, thank you very much. And this cartoon is an underground tunnel. We have a water world, basically. Here also you can replace carbon black for optimum properties for the silica use. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Santanu Chattopadhyay, for such a bright and detailed and insightful presentation. So we have many questions which have come in, regarding the topic. So I will put up a couple of questions to you to answer right now. And we will share the rest of the questions with you over a mail, and maybe you can reply back with the responses, and we will share it with the concerned persons.
Okay, sure.
Right. So the first question is from Shreya Karmakar from Sahara Rubber Products. The question is, when we use silica in bromobutyl, the compound becomes very slow. Which cure system can we, use to get good cure with silica loading of around 30 THE?
See, sulfur cross-linking itself will work, but thing is that this bromine functionality has certain roles here. What basically slowing down your reaction. So possibly your coupling is not optimum. You have to play with the coupling part of it. And second thing, as I emphasize again, I'll re-emphasize that you must make sure your silica is all dry. That may be interfering with your system.
Okay. Right. So the next question is from Jigar Prajapati from Jigar Rubber. And the question is, how can we get 90-95 hardness for color rubber compounds, especially for seals?
Once again, I mean, having the hardness 99-95, the thumb rule is that every 1 pH of silica 2 pH of silica you use optimally, it gives you increment of hardness of 2 SORE unit. So you have to take care of your base hardness. Say for example, many of the rubber has a base hardness 40 to 45. So on top of that, you have an incremental addition. Again, that too is very important, how much efficient your coupling thinks is functional. So in that case, it will not follow that unitary part. 2 pH addition of the filler will give you 1 hardness increment. So that you have to do a little bit of R&D and fix it up for yourself.
Right. The next question is from Vinod Kumar Oja, and the question is, most of automotive customers asking for ash content less than 5%. So how we can maintain this in black color compound? It is very challenging for them.
It's true. It's very true. I mean, ash content less than 5% with the silica, that too higher loading of silica will be practically impossible in many cases. Okay, it's really, really very tricky. And that too, specific to his question, let me send it by email. I'll get back to him. But point is that
I will share
5% as is with the carbon black itself is sometimes going to be very tricky, very tricky.
All right, sure. So we will share the question with you and you can reply back on the mail. The next question is from Anjan Sarkar. The question is, what are the test methods to identify the content of geminal, vicinal and isolated silanol in PPT silica?
Yes. So 2 methods as I talked about, but that is too expensive a method. One of the methods, there is a titometric method that is very difficult. I mean, chemically you have to again optimize it in your R&D itself. That I'm coming there. But the most sophisticated, more quantitative method is solid state NMR method and X-ray photoelectron spectroscopy method. Now you can ask me the question, sir, can I afford to have 5,000 rupees for just estimating that? No, you don't have to do it. For that, you have a R&D. You do kind of a titometric method. You have to titrate because geminal and your isolated silanes are most reactive silane. That reacts with SiOH model compounds. So you have to titrate it and do the NMR, make your calibration curve, and from the calibration curve, you will be able to say for your system what it's going to be the isolated silane, or you can do make use of FTIR as well parallelly with the titometric technique. Thank you.
The next question is from Subhashish Chatterjee. And the question is, if natural silica can be processed to the particle size of PPT silica, how efficient it is for rubber application?
It's okay, but two things, Mr. Chatterjee. One of the ways is when you use a natural silica, you pulverize it, you do it, whatever process you follow, you still have some of the impurities left over that can interfere with your curing system, other systems as well. Second thing, even if you pulverize, you do it, your amorphous content, that makes a whole difficulty in that case. So those are the 2 major issues. Of course, with the R&D things, I mean, doing systematically, if you improve these 2 aspects of it, of course, why not? It can do that. It can be at least at par with the fume silica, for example, if not with the precipitated silica at the first place.
All right. The next question is from Yashodan Khanve. And the question from him is, what is the difference in PPT silica produced through HCl and H2SO4 route of precipitation?
Of course, it's two types of salts it generates. One case it is sodium chloride, another is sodium sulfate. So how efficiently it can be removed off? So if it is a sodium chloride, you all know we have it every day. So its solubility is extremely high. So in that case, it is a lot more easier to eliminate the salt. I mean, unused salt by the process of decantation or by the process of filtering, whatever way. In case of sodium sulfate, of course, sodium sulfate is a standard practice everywhere, but it's a little difficult as compared to hydrochloric acid process.
All right. Maybe the last question of the session, and maybe I will share the rest of the questions. We have received a lot of questions regarding the topic, so I will share the rest of the questions over the mail, and you can respond back. But the last question for the session is from Harish Rijwani. What is new Haber process, and what are the specific application of this silica?
New Haber process is altogether a different process rather than your conventional filter bed process, basically. So its properties I showed you very, very crudely. In some sense, it's better. In some sense, it is inferior. But altogether, this process is little different as compared to where you are actually filtering it, removing the rest part of the residues. There is a little difference. The new Hoover process compared to the conventional process.
All right. If time permits, I have a few more questions. If you allow me to put up a few more questions.
Yeah, surely. Go ahead, please.
Right. So the next question is from Anjan Sarkar, and it says that what role does the shape of PPT silica play in effective hydrophobization?
Once again, please, can you read it once more, please?
Yeah. What role does the shape of PPT silica play in effective hydrophobization?
Yes, of course. The shape of precipitated silica has all the roles, basically. Essentially, you can understand it all deals with the optimum aggregate size, basically. So unless otherwise you have that, it all centers around how much, like pertaining to your earlier question, Mr. Sarkar. So same as that. I mean, if you have that size and that shape, and how much is the geminal and vicinal, geminal and isolated sealant content, that varies based on your aggregate size and aggregate size distribution. So your hydrophobicity varies accordingly. It's same as the way it does for the functionality that it has.
Okay. The next question is from Saikat Banerjee. How can I modify silica for spacecraft application?
See, for spacecraft application, it's no different. I mean, you are using silica. You are trying to make it, as dispersed as possible. But of course, there is a point. That kind of silane you will be using that should not have any volatile content. So your silane has to be, or any products you are making for space applications, that has to be devoid of any volatile content. Other than the technology is all the way same what I have depicted so far.
Okay. The next question from Chandan Bhattacharya. How much silica can be used to get better compression set in EVA blown article where the hardness will be at 50 shore A?
It's a chopol. It's a SU kind of a use. Once again, it's some sort of a R&D you have to do. That I cannot really say from the basic silicon technology how much it's going to be, but it has to be done a little bit of R&D on the product specific to you.
Right. The next question from Mr. Bhavik Shah. Which is the best silica for silicone rubber?
See, it all depends. Fume silica generally used to be used for most of the applications, but point is that with the advent of HD silica and that I didn't talk about is a selenized silica after HD. So that is another challenge. That would have been a better solution even over the fume silica.
Right. The next question is from Muninder Gupta. How much percentage of silica can be incorporated in footwear polymers, that is EVA, HSR, and what are the benefits of it?
See, in actually silica started its journey from shoe sole application itself. So I don't know exactly. I never did a hardcore R&D on that. But for your information, putting in a lot of silica is a challenge. First of all, it's dispersion itself is a challenge. As I mentioned, you even in natural rubber for tire application, all the established R&Ds, they cannot go beyond 10 or 20% of replacement of it. Okay, so bottom line is that your processing characteristics is flowability, scorchability, everything goes high basically. So in that aspect, of course, if you use it for shoe application, you have another part which is the calcine clay or hard clay, whatever you use. On top of that, normally, if I'm not very wrong, please correct me also, it should not be too high a loading for a SD silica or anything else. It should not be more than like 20-30 pH or say, for example. It should not be. Otherwise, your processing will be a big problem. Even if you compression mold it, it's going to be a problem for sure.
Okay. Next question from Tarkeshwar Nath. How to improve processing of high loading of silica in nitrile rubber, that is 70 to 80 PHR?
70 to 80 PHR silica and nitrile rubber is a tough job once again, my dear. So it's not going to be that easy compared to anything else. So again, I mean, you have to try, you have to do your R&D. That's what I'll tell you, how far you can go. Say, for example, let me tell you one of my current experience when I was visiting Michelin last summer in France. Those guys that told, yes, sir, we could able to do 100% replacement of silica in natural rubber. So I was trying to poke in somehow or some way. I have to know that how. But of course, it's a question of several $1 million. But I could get some clue by which they have been doing, but that is yet not established in our country. Okay, so that's what in your case you have to invest something on R&D, but the basics I already told you. How to load it more, that means aggregation you have to get rid of. To get rid of the R&D, it's once for all, for everybody. This is my advice, that you have to make sure all silica surface should be devoid of moisture, first of all, the very first one. Second thing, you have to have an optimum coverage on the surface of it so that it doesn't absorb a lot of the additives. And third thing, your curatives, your coupling agent should optimally interact, otherwise it will form all aggregates. So it's once again, don't confine yourself to the coupling agent by sealant technology, which is typically 10% with respect to total silica filler. But there are a lot of other avenues that I can tell you that you should explore. I mean, it's a question of several crores of rupees. Okay, thank you.
All right. Last two questions. Second last from Mr. Bijoyesh Saha. How can we reduce the Muni viscosity of 50 PHR silica with SBR based compound and 5 PHR process oil?
So Muni viscosity, once again, that means you have to reduce the aggregate size. In order to reduce the aggregate size, you have to have once again, it's same, like you should have an optimum dispersion promoter. So far, I have been talking about the coupling agent only, but your question indirectly takes me to some of the solutions. Okay, I'll tell only this much here.
Okay, so the last question for the day is from Mr. Subramaniam K. How high dosage silica based compound will perform in wear aspect as compared with black filler based compound?
It's as such is going to be inferior. It's going to be some 10 order of magnitude less if I talk about tear strength or any abrasion resistance. But that's what the challenge lies. We have to improve it. So wear resistance is far inferior compared to traditional carbon black filled compounds, but that has to be looked upon. That has to be improved upon, essentially.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Santanu Chattopadhyay, for such a insightful presentation and taking up so many questions. In fact, we have a few more questions, but due to time constraints, we will share it with you over a mail, and maybe you can reply back on those questions, and we will share it with the concerned person. Thank you so much once again to all the participants.
By the way, Mr. Hashan, how many students are there? I couldn't. Participants, I'll not say student, of course. Being a teacher, I am always habitual saying students, but how many participants were there?
We have more than 200 participants for this webinar.
Oh, good.
Yes. We have a very good participation for this webinar, and we are thankful to you as well to share your presentation with the members and the delegates who have attended the webinar today. And we look forward to have you again with us on several other topics to, share your presentations. Thank you to all the participants and all the delegates, for joining the webinar today. And we will respond back with all your queries once we get the response from Dr. Chattopadhyay. Thank you so much, and thanks once again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, sir.